Hey, kids cook real food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And today, I tell you what, I am going to learn so much. And I know you are because honestly, our topic is foster care. And I don't feel called to foster, but I want to support healthy kids, right? I want to help all kids in America be really, truly healthy. And I think it takes a village. I think we all need to understand how to support kids in many different situations. And as we'll hear from our guest today, there are a lot of foster kids in America. So, Dr. John DeGarmo, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we talk a lot at Kids Cook Real Food about the importance of connection, the importance of like bonding with their kids, and this is something that is tough for foster care kids. So I'm really excited to dig in. But let me tell people a little bit about you because Dr. DeGarmo is a foster care expert. He's a keynote speaker. He's been interviewed on all sorts of networks, CNN, ABC, and Fox across the nation, the 700 Club. So believe me, I'm honored, a little bit nervous to be the interviewer here. And he's the author of many books on foster care, including the Foster Parenting Manual, Faith and Foster Care, and Love and Mayhem, which I bet is full of a lot of really good stories. And I am most impressed, though, and I think you will be too, that his family has fostered over 50 different children in the last 15 years. And I've seen this incredible spot on Good Morning America when he was awarded the Ultimate Hero Award, and talk about a busy household. So I don't know how it's quiet on your end of this call, Dr. DeGarmo, but again, we thank you so much for being here. How did this get started? Like, how did your family get into foster care?
Well, it's not something I ever planned on doing. That's not something I intended on doing. I believed a lot of the myths out there that so many believe about foster care. The kids are bad kids and foster parents are kind of strange people. That part's true. You got to be a little bit odd to do what we do. It's a different lifestyle
Aw.
to be sure. I met my wife in a performing group. We traveled the world singing and dancing in a group called Up With People. And that's where we met, got married, moved to Australia. And then our first child died. Our child died of a condition called anencephaly, or some pronounce it anencephaly. It's a condition where the brain or skull never truly form. And I went into a pretty dark spot for a while, I'll be honest. And then we moved back to the United States. I started teaching in a rural high school setting. And we had 3 children of our own at that point that were healthy. And then I noticed a lot of students coming into my classroom at that time that had issues of behavior, of academics, of attendance, a lot of them in my classroom. I kept thinking, what's going on? What's the correlation here? Why so many? And I met a lot of their birth parents in this rural, poverty-stricken town. And I recognized, really starts in the home. So I went to my wife and said, hey, we've been blessed with 3 kids. We've lost our first child. How can we help others? And that led to discussion of foster parenting. That led to 60 plus kids. That led to the adoption of 3 of them. And really my life's work now.
That's incredible. So, and the kids you were seeing in your classes, they weren't foster kids, but
No.
that just sort of opened your eyes to the importance of the home environment. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
That's right. That's right. In fact, I had one of my seniors, she was a senior and she was pregnant with triplets. And I knew the environment that she had grown up with. And I recognized, these babies don't have much of a chance because her mom is in rough shape. So I said to my wife, what if I brought these triplets home? And my wife said, as long as you do the diapers. Boy, I wish I had listened to her because I went 20 years straight with kids, at least one child in my house with diapers. And I'm the diaper guy. My wife does hair. I do the diapers. So I should have got my doctorate in diaper changing.
So those triplets were your first foster kids?
No, no, but
Oh,
that led us to the journey of fostering.
okay. Oh, wow. What a beautiful journey. And I have to say again, I don't know a lot about fostering. Someone I follow on Instagram just went through the process of fostering and taking the baby back to the mom. And it was I mean it's fascinating, it's heart-wrenching, it's inspiring to watch. And then I read about kids in other countries, right? People who adopt from other countries, and just the situation of being in an orphanage and how decades later that can still be impacting the child. And it's interesting, we don't really do orphanages in America anymore. As the foster care expert, can you talk a little bit about how and why that shift from orphanages to foster care happened?
Well, there are residential group homes or therapeutical group homes across the United States, and so many of them I've had the pleasure of working with. Some might call them a modern day orphanage, if you will. It's
Okay.
a home, a large home with children who are maybe placed in the foster care home, or maybe children who have no family and they get the therapeutical services that they need.
Mm.
Um, Fostering is a tough lifestyle. It's the hardest thing I've done. At the same time, it's the most rewarding thing I've done. Every child's made me a better person in some way,
Mm.
and 60 plus kids I've been blessed to have that in my home. But yeah, a lot of people say to me, Dr. John, I couldn't do what you do. It would hurt too much to get the kids back. And my response is, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. That's how it should be, because these kids need stability, they need structure, they need consistency, but overall, what they need is unconditional love. They need someone to love them with all of their heart, so that when the children leave, for whatever reason it might be, yes, our hearts break, and I've grieved for so many kids, like losing my own children. But in a way, that's a gift, I think, because we might be, as a foster parent, the first person who's ever provided healthy, positive, unconditional love to a child. So when that child goes on their journey, they're going to remember for a time in their life somebody loved them. That's a gift.
Your perspective is a gift, to not run from pain, to not run from the fact that yes, it will hurt at the end. I mean, we could say that about all parenting. It's going to be hard. It's going to hurt, but ideally we want to still bring that life into the world and not avoid all pain and suffering. That's part of being human, and what a beautiful reminder for all of us.
Well, I
Um,
think about all the children who are suffering right now. Since COVID, we've seen a spike in the increase of child abuse. We've
oh yeah.
seen a spike in the increase of child trauma. We've seen a spike in the rate of children who are considering suicide because of isolations and distancing. We're seeing a spike in the rate of child predators reaching out to these children online for human trafficking. We're going to have a generation of children, I believe, who are going to be on antidepressants. We're going to have huge issues of attachment, huge issues of trust because of what we've done to these kids during self-isolation and COVID. So I think about all these kids who are in pain. My broken heart, and a foster parent's heart's like a quilt, all these patches over it. It's the least I can do is to provide love for these kids, because so many children have never had the opportunity to be loved. And that grieves me just there. Every child deserves to be loved. So many don't get it.
Oh, it's so important. And I mean, I hope that some people listening out there are going to have that little spark in their heart just listening to you, and speak to their spouse and say, hey, maybe this is something we're called to do, and what a beautiful gift that will be. But it takes a village, right? That the foster parents aren't the only people who can impact these kids' lives. So how can the rest of us, maybe neighbors or parents of a classmate or a teacher or a school administrator, like what do you want those people to know most about foster care kids?
That's a great question. In the United States, you got about 425,000 children who are in the foster care system. You've got roughly 300,000 children who are victims of human trafficking. You've got 800,000 children who are missing every year.
Hmm.
That means there are children suffering. There are children being abused, neglected, abandoned in every single community where we live, around us. So many times we don't want to talk about it or acknowledge it because it makes us feel uncomfortable. I
Hmm.
call human trafficking America's ugly secret. We don't want to talk about it, even though it could be in our own family. We don't want to acknowledge it because it makes us feel uncomfortable. Yet everybody can help a child in crisis in some way. As I said earlier, foster parenting is the hardest thing I've done. Not everybody can be a foster parent, but I firmly believe everybody can help in some way. And there's so many ways. You can contact your local child welfare agency, your foster parent association, say, hey, you know what, how can I help? Maybe you could be a mentor to these children or a tutor. Maybe you could provide school supplies at the beginning of the year. Maybe you could provide brand new clothes and shoes and jackets to a foster care closet. Maybe you can provide meals to foster parents. Maybe during the holiday season, you can provide gifts for these kids. So many kids have come to my house with just the clothes on their back, sometimes even stapled together.
Oh.
Uh, and when that happens at 10:30, 11:30 at night, it's really hard for me to get out to the store. The kids can have clothing the next day. Some people can donate, brand new clothes to those kids. Sometimes their belongings just come in a black plastic bag, which
Mhm.
to the kid tells them that they're garbage. I've helped churches and faith-based organizations start up suitcase drives, buy brand new suitcases for these kids. That's just a few of the many
Yeah.
ways that people can help kids in crisis right in their own backyard.
Sure. And if a teacher has a child in foster care in their classroom, or maybe there's a foster family in your neighborhood, let's just talk about attitude. How do we talk to our kids if our kid says, "Oh, like we got a new kid in class.
You
I
know,
don't know anything about him, but he said he doesn't have a mom and dad anymore." You know what I mean? Like, what kind of language can we use to make sure that our kids are open, accepting, and loving?
and that's important language because school is the last place a child in foster care wants to be. Everything about
Ooh,
school reminds them that they have that label, foster kid, and no one wants that label placed upon them as an ugly, ugly label
okay.
that they're ashamed of. They want, despite the abuse and neglect they may have gone through, however horrific it may have been. End of the day, they want to go back to their mom and dad because that's their norm, and they
Mhm.
see their peers in school going back to mom and dad. They see their peers doing reports on what I did for Christmas vacation, my family or
Oh,
family, traditions or history, whatever it might be, and they can't share in that. So, and on top of that, 55% of kids in foster care will drop out of school. They're behind 18 months behind academically on average.
makes
And it's a
sense.
rough
Yeah.
it's a rough time for kids in school. So, we need to first of all get over the label. A lot of kids in
Mhm.
foster care are bullied at school. Bullying is pretty, kids can be rough, particularly middle age. There's that
Yeah.
saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. You and I both know that's a lie. That's
Yeah.
such a lie. So we can talk to our kids about, how can we help this child who's suffering? How can we help this? How can we be their friend? How can we reach out to them and include them? My kids, fortunately, a lot of people say to me, Dr. John, how I don't know about my own kids if I'm a foster parent. How's it affect my own children?
Mm.
I'm so happy to say that all six of my children, and I've adopted three, all six of my children stand up to bullies. They recognize someone who's suffering and in pain, and they will quickly reach out to them and try to befriend them. I think it's because of all they've seen in our own home with the families. When the child comes to our home, they become a member of our family. They become a member of my
Mhm.
family. The kids bond. So my own children see what it's like for someone they've grown up in their house suffering, and so they're quickly to help other kids. I think teachers and parents can sit down with their children and say, you know what, here's somebody's coming to our classroom. Let's make sure we befriend them. Let's help them out. Let's make sure there's no bullying going on, no
Mhm.
name calling going on. Let's how can we find ways to make them feel comfortable in the classroom?
That's great. I mean, as any parent wants to raise, empathetic children, children who not only can stand up for themselves but stand up for others, it's a hard task. But
Right.
if we have continual conversations, very, very possible. Dr. John, I got to back up really quickly
Yep.
because we published an interview with Lenore Skenazy, the founder of Free Range Kids, who says, kids are not getting kidnapped. Kids are not getting stolen into human trafficking. Now, I heard your numbers: 800 kids, I believe you air quoted it, missing, 300 or 800,000, sorry, 300,000 in human trafficking. Is this, and because I just want to make sure that we reassure parents that these kids are probably not being snatched out of their front yards and off their homes. Are these mostly runaway kids whose parents have abandoned them, who are falling into or getting stuck into human trafficking?
Some,
Okay.
online technology, social media is one way where predators are lurking and they're
Ooh,
looking for the most vulnerable children. And
okay.
during this era of COVID, when parents are at work and kids are at home doing their schoolwork, let's be honest, they're not spending 8 hours a day online doing their schoolwork. They're surfing, they're playing games, they're chatting, and that's where the predators are. And they recognize this time, and they
Mm,
seek out those most vulnerable children, and they fill them with lies. They fill them with false hopes, false promises. They make these. They groom them and they
mm,
lure them in, and it's quite easy. It's quite easy to do that, particularly for those children who are the most vulnerable. And they don't have
yeah,
a healthy attachment with a relative. I'm sorry, with a parental figure in their household.
sure.
Those kids and kids in foster care, especially, are very, very vulnerable because
That.
they're going online looking for one thing. love, for someone to love them. And so if someone's on the other side of the computer and saying, I love you, I'll take care of you, I'll help you out, they're going to believe it. And they run away to these cities and they quickly fall victims of human trafficking. Again, that person who said it's not happening, again, what I said earlier, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to acknowledge it because it makes us feel uncomfortable, but it is happening in our own backyards.
Okay.
It is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States just for children.
Important to know, important to talk about, but it sounds like the risky area is really online in the internet as opposed to the neighborhood playground. Strangers.
Right. But that can happen
in real life.
I'm sure that can happen. Absolutely.
Well, what is, you talked about, the grief of sending a foster child back and them leaving your house. What's the greatest joy you found in being a foster parent?
Oh gosh, where do you start? Watching a child learn how to laugh for the very first time. Watching a child learn how to smile. The first time, the 4-year-old who came to me and only words she could say were no words. She'd been raped repeatedly by her grandfather over and over again. And watching her learn how to smile, and the first laugh she had. Taking one of our kids from foster care to Disney World and watching Cinderella bend down and hold her hands and call her princess, and that child just face lit up for the very first time. Christmas time, when we had a 13-year-old boy, tough as nails, so many walls of pain between him, and he opened up his first present, and he started crying.
First in his life.
Yep.
At age 13.
Yep, and no one had given him a gift before. Things like that. Christmas time. Every Christmas, December 23rd, we open our house up to a lot of the former kiddos who lived in our house, and this past year, during COVID, we had 23 kids come back to our house to celebrate with us. That's a great, it's just fantastic.
Because they're family. That's beautiful to hear. What do people misunderstand myth-wise about foster care?
Again, the kids are bad kids. Foster parents are weird people. You got to have a big house to be a foster parent. No, you don't. Have to be married to be a foster parent. No, you don't. Have to have a lot of money to be a foster parent. No, you don't. Those are misconceptions. Okay. Foster parents in it for the money. I don't see possibly how they could be. I just don't know how you could be. When they come to my house, we try to give them every opportunity to be a child, which means we're signing them up for wrestling. We're signing them up for marching band. We're signing them for dance lessons. And that's out of our own pocket. We're Christmas and birthdays, we go huge with them because it could be their very first birthday or Christmas. Yes, there's a monthly stipend, but it doesn't cover everything, and I don't expect it to cover everything. Those are some of the misconceptions right there, I believe.
Okay. Sure, just all the roadblocks, the excuses people can say, like, this can't possibly be for me. If someone out there, Dr. Jen, is thinking, well, maybe it's something I could consider, what's the first thing you would want to say to a family thinking about fostering?
First thing I would say is, if you're married or you have a partner, talk to your spouse. Talk to your spouse, because you both have to be in this together. As I said earlier, hardest thing I've done, most rewarding thing I've done, but I couldn't have done it without my spouse, without my wife. We are a team, a partnership, and there are times where one person's really struggling and grieving over the loss of a child in our lives. And so we need someone to rely upon and help and carry the load, so to speak. Talk to your spouse, make sure it's a good fit, because if one person wants to do it and the other person does not want to do it, you can't do it, because it can ruin a relationship. Make sure your children are on board with it as well. And then contact your local child welfare agency and say, how do we start? Where do we sign up for? And get ready for an adventure and journey that's going to change your life too. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Now, do you have best tips, best practices for maybe parents out there who are currently fostering or who have adopted a child into their family? Just ways to make it the best experience for everyone.
You've got to have a support group of some kind. You've got to have a support. The lifestyle of the foster parent is one that few will ever understand, because when you're caring for a child in your home 24 hours a day who's filled with anxiety, filled with trauma, I go to work to rest, because when I come home, it can be full on sometimes. So you got to have a support group, a foster parent support group of some kind. You have to learn sometimes that you need to say no to some placements. When the phone call comes, I had to make a decision very quickly. Is this the right placement for my home? Can
Yeah.
I provide what the child needs? Is this a good fit for my family? Is my family a good fit for the child? And sometimes it's not a good fit. So we need to say no. It's hard for me to do. It's hard for me. When I hear the story of a child, it's hard for me to say no, but sometimes we need to do that. And prepare for lack of sleep. I can sleep when I die. I often tell people, I'll sleep when I get to heaven. Um, but, as I said earlier, every child's made me a better person, better husband, better member of
Mm.
community, a better father to my own kids. A joy, a joy.
Oh, such beautiful stories and so important. And I think acknowledging that so many kids are, or all the kids really are coming to you with trauma. I would think learning about trauma and how that affects kids and making sure that we see behaviors as a reaction to their trauma and not an attack on us. Right. I mean,
Yeah,
that's for
right.
any parent, really.
Right. No, take it. I tell foster parents, do your research. That's why I wrote these books behind me. Do your research,
Yeah.
not to take it personally, because when the child is lashing out or withdrawing, it's because their emotions are overwhelming them. They're confused. They're scared. They're filled with tremendous anxiety. It's a time of anxiety being placed in my home. They can go through all that pain and abuse and anxiety, but being taken away from their family and placed into a strange person's house late at night without any explanation, that is scary.
Oh, yeah.
It's so scary for these kids. Why am I here? When do I go home? When do I see mommy next? Who are these people? Does anybody love me? So their emotions overwhelm them, and sometimes they lash out at us. And we have to remind foster parents, don't take it personal. It has nothing to do with you. This child is scared and doesn't know how to process it.
For sure. Do you have certain phrases that you just sort of use in those moments when kids are lashing out, either to them or to yourself in your head?
Oh, in my head, sometimes I have to remind myself, love is patient, love is kind, love is patient,
Oh,
love is kind. Because I have had in our house. For the child, it's to hold them, to let them
okay.
cry. It's okay to let them cry. To tell them, I'm here for you. I
Mm,
understand. I understand. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You're safe. You're important. You're cared
mm.
for. I'm happy that you're here in my house.
I can only imagine just what a balm and a wash of calm that is for them. And I'm sure you probably repeat those phrases over and over because they're not sinking in. They're not believing. These
Let me
kids
tell you,
aren't going to believe you the first time you say
I've
you love them.
I've held so many little kids in my arms, those first few nights as they cry themselves to sleep, and I felt powerless. What can I do? There's nothing I can say or do to comfort this child because I am a complete stranger to this child.
Yeah.
They are so scared. They just want their mommy and their daddy, even though they've been abused so badly. So I just have to, it's time. It takes time for these kids to
Mm.
recognize, well, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm going to be safe. Maybe this stranger's not going to hurt me.
Mm.
That's hard.
Wow. It it does sound hard. It does sound hard. At the end of our healthy parenting connector episodes, I always like to leave parents with a message of hope. And I do believe you've shared a lot of hope, but also a lot of pain. And we are human, and there's two sides to every experience. But what do you want to encourage parents with, or sort of a story or a message of hope right here at the end?
Sure, sure. So I often remind myself and other foster parents that years from now, the child who came to my house or came to another foster parent's house, they might not remember my name. And years from now, they might not remember my face.
Mm.
But years from now, they're going to remember one thing, that for a time in their life, and maybe the only time in their life, somebody loved them. And that's going to change that child. I can't change the world, and you can't change the world, and your audience can't change the world. But for these kids that we care for, these kids that we help, whether they're living in our home or whether we're helping them with donations and whatever it might be, for that child, their world has changed. And that makes all the difference.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for all these stories, all these messages. It makes me want to be a foster care parent, and then I'm like, So I don't think it's for me, but I feel like there's got to be a way I can help. And as you said, especially in these crazy COVID times that we're living in, every single system that's been in place and worked for decades is breaking. because we don't have that human connection, how much more difficult this is for everyone in the foster care system. So thank you. Thank you for being a good example of welcoming people into your home, no matter what, and loving no matter what. And if nothing else, may all of us out there remember to love the people near you and love people who you can possibly help in any way, shape, or form. Thank you so much, Dr. John.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Katie Kimball for Kids Cook Real Food and the Healthy Parenting Connector, and I will see you back next week because our mission here is always to help parents raise healthy, independent adults who know their way around the kitchen through connection, confidence, and creativity. And as human beings, we have to be well rounded. So we bring lots of topics to you week after week. Thank you.